So everybody's here to do the spec review for mobile app, right? All right, cool, good. Then if we're wrong, we're all wrong together, so that's good. So we've got a couple minutes before we start, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'll wait those couple minutes as people pop in and out and figure out where they're going. We'll be recording the session, so keep that in mind if you don't want to be on the recording. I think it's just still recording. It didn't even stop. Hopefully all our recordings come out okay. What else? I'm Manny, again, for those MESA staff. Typically, I'm to blame for the specs, writing the specs. I'm a big part of that. So if you have problems with them, feel free to send me your thoughts and suggestions. But with this one in particular, what's interesting is there was actually a mobile app design challenge that I was a judge for last year. It's part of an international mobile app challenge that actually targets girls. So if any of our teams are made up completely of female or female identified students, you have the option to also be a part of that challenge. I think that one's almost done as far as sign up. So if you're interested in that, make sure you sign up, because they have cooler prizes than we do. Like, you can get a medal and ribbons and cool recognition through MESA, but I think they give away money, and it's international, which is pretty cool too. And we're looking to kind of build our partnership with them, but definitely check them out. And the other cool thing about Technovation is they have a lot of free resources. So they've got a whole curriculum you could use that'll kind of take you from the beginning to the end of your project that you can follow. And they've also been doing a series of classes around the challenge and mobile app design on their YouTube channel. So as we're talking, I'm going to see if I can find those links, and I'll pop those into the chat as well. I know in the specs, the website, but I'll pop that in now. Technovation challenge. If you wanted to look at their curriculum, they've got a curriculum which is at that link, and I'll see if I can find their YouTube channel before we jump deep into the specs themselves. And I really based our specs. I with their permission, I checked with them first. We basically stole their design and said, hey, we really love what you guys did with this challenge. Do you mind if we use a similar or basically the same setup for ours? And then hopefully that will encourage some of our students to be some of your students, and we can work together. So that was kind of the reason why we did it that way. So I am putting that YouTube channel in there. So those are all those links. All right, cool. And hopefully I'll be able to share my screen. So it is 11:02. We'll get started. I want to thank our volunteers who are in here who help out as well. Feel free to jump in at any time. So we've got the people who are much better at the mobile and the coding stuff, like Trevor in here helping out. So I appreciate him being in here as our technical expert. And we've got, I think, Brad's in here. Thank you for being here as well, Brad. Appreciate you always being available. So I am going to share my screen so we can all look at the mobile app specs together. Can you see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you're able to see my screen. All right, very cool. Thank you for that. So these are the mobile app specs. If you have questions at any point, feel free to drop those in the chat, or you can interrupt me. I don't mind you doing that either. I'm going to put the chat over on my other screen so I can see that. To put those in there. So when we're talking about the mobile app challenge, right, anytime with our MESA specs, I think there are some key pieces you need to pay attention to, right? And we've seen this a lot over the years, that students get really excited and it's just awesome. And they want to just jump right into the design, right? So they're like, I'm going to skip this part and let me go to the design parameters, right? But the information up here is also important. So, the biggest piece is like who can participate. That's just general information. But this objective right here, super important, because that's really telling you the goal of the project, right? What are we supposed to be doing, right? So what we're saying is students will use the human-centered design model to design a mobile app, Android or iOS, to solve a problem in the community, right? So right there, you've got two key pieces of information. You're going to be doing human-centered design, right? Which means if you don't know what that is, I need to look that up and figure out what that means, right? And we've got resources on our website about that. And you can ask MESA staff about that. Your teachers have been given information about that. And we have to solve a problem in our community, right? And you'll hear this in the next session, but one of the things we noticed with a couple of the projects that were submitted is that they weren't doing human-centered design and they weren't solving a problem in their community. So if you're not doing those two things already, you're not going to be off to a good start. So make sure that that's important, right? Then we usually give a little bit of backstory, which talks about, what we're basing on. What's the real world application or the real world connection of our challenge to the real world, obviously. So, everybody uses phones. Everybody, I'm sure almost everybody here uses an app. You may be using the Zoom app right now, right, on your devices. So that's the kind of thing that we're having you look at and be a part of, right? Next super important parts obviously are what is required, right? What can we do? What do we have to do? And what are we not allowed to do, right? Those are three important things to know about your design, right? And we're kind of mimicking what happens in the real world sometimes, right? You might be part of a mobile app design company, right? And there's another company that says we need an app for our business, right? And they put it out to all the mobile app companies and says, we want an app, we want it to do this, it can't do this, and it has to have this. And this is who we're trying to reach with our app, right? And so then if you're like, cool, right? They put out this proposal or this request, we're going to put together an idea. And if it's not giving them the 4 things that they asked for, you're not even going to be looked at as a possible company to hire to build their app, right? So you have to know what the design parameters are, right? So number 1, the design must be developed using MIT App Inventor or a similar program, right? MIT App Inventor is what Technovation encourages people to use, but we left it wide open for our MESA competition. So we know there may be things you're already using or familiar with, and we want you to use what you're comfortable with. As long as you can give us the information we need and we can see what we need to properly judge your project, then you can use whatever you want. So that or is really important, right? Or a similar program. MIT App Inventor may be one that you're like, yeah, that's cool. I'm going to use that one. Let's jump into it, right? We want to make sure that the project is researched, developed, and designed by students, right? So it should be the student work. It also should not be a plagiarized app, right? You can't say, you know what, I see that app is cool. I'm just going to build that app, but do it myself, right? If you're copying someone else's ideas or work, that's called plagiarism, and you can get into legal trouble. If you do that, even in school or at your schools, but definitely at college, you can get in serious trouble for that, right? You can be inspired by other people's ideas. You can borrow elements of their programs and then rework them or implement them into your ideas. It's always a good idea to give credit to those people if you do. If it's something that they have copyrighted, it's protected, it's their property, ask for permission to use it. So if you're integrating things like songs, right? You're going to use a song from someone, or you're going to use someone's artwork. If it's copyrighted, you have to get their permission. If it's not, you should ask them permission, or at least give them credit when you use their stuff in your apps. So keep those things in mind as well. And it has to be designed to solve a problem in your community. If it's not being designed to solve a problem in your community, then you're not going to do well in this competition, right? And really, most apps are designed to meet the needs of people anyway, right? And that's what human-centered design means, is that your project is focused on the humans who are going to use it. So you have to know who they are, you have to know what they want and need, and then your design has to meet those wants and needs in order to do well. And you should be getting their feedback throughout the process. So if you put an idea together for this group of people, then you go to that group of people and says, here's my idea, what do you think? They'll say, I like this, I don't like this could be better, I'm struggling with this. Then you take that feedback and you say, okay, now that I have that feedback, I can make my design better, because if they don't want to use it, then I'm not successful, right? That's kind of the whole basis for human-centered design. Make sense to folks? Yeah, feel free to ask questions, or if anybody has thoughts, if you had anything you wanted to add, Trevor, feel free to pop them in at any time. So regarding the code, teams may use publicly released libraries, right? So there's going to be things available on the internet, right? That happens a lot with coding. People are like, hey, this really worked for me. You guys can use it, pop it into your code, and then build off of that, right? Examples, tools. But we also want to make sure that you are developing some original code. And if you have an idea that's your idea, it's kind of new or building off of something else, you should have some original code anyway, because that means you had to make some changes and do some things that reflect your ideas. So you should have some original code. Deliverables. So these are the things that you have to turn in, right? You have to deliver to MESA to be scored in order to do well in the competition, right? Number one is going to be a design brief. This is actually kind of copied over from our national competitions. You'll see this a lot with MESA. We have bring elements of our national competition into other pieces of our competitions, right? On that design brief, you have to have your school name, the team members' names, the name of your app, right? If you go to the App Store, you don't just say, I need an app that does this, and then there's a description, right? Every app has a name, so it's easy to identify. So come up with a creative name for your app. You'll want to have a problem statement in your design brief, right? Problem statement is 100 words that describes the problem. What is the problem you're solving? And then how your app is going to address it, right? It's really short. It's kind of, if people can read it, they know what you're doing and why you're doing it, right? And then now anything else you share with them, they use that as a reference. Everything should be connected to that problem statement. And then the other piece of your design brief will be screenshots of the app, right? So if your app doesn't really work the way you want it to, but you have a good idea of what it would look like and how it would work, and you can share that with us, and we can understand what you're trying to do. We understand the coding may not work perfectly. It might be buggy, that you're not finished, but we could say, wow, I really like the idea. I really like their design and where they want to go with it. And that might be enough to say, I'm willing to put my faith in this team and let them work out the bug parts, because I really like what they're doing. So screenshots of the app, if you can get those, or if you can't even get to that point, if it's drawings and sketches that you made of what things would look like and how they would flow, that should be part of your design brief as well. Any questions to this point? Just check in real quick. No? All right, cool. So the next deliverable thing you'll have to submit to MESA is the pitch video. So it'll be 3 to 5 minutes of you and your team talking about your design, okay? So we're gonna ask you to share that via a YouTube link or a cloud storage link. So if you saved your presentation on Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, something like that, feel free to do that. When you share it, make sure you share it so that anyone with the link can view it, because we're gonna share that link with our judges. And if they can't see it, they won't be able to judge it, and you won't get points for that video. So you have to make sure it's shareable. There's a variety of ways you could do that. The easiest way would be to like pop in a Zoom room like this, and then share your screen, and you can do a presentation and talk over it, record the session, and then submit that as your video. Probably gonna be the easiest way to do it. If you decide to do something a little bit differently, you can do that as well. We didn't put any specifics on what this video should look like. Okay. And then the next thing that you'll want to submit to us is your source code. So again, you'll want to share that with us, Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox. Typically, we're going to be trying to look at that, and the way you'll want to share it is within your platform, right? So if you're using MIT App Inventor, we'll probably open your source code in MIT App Inventor. If you're doing it in Swift, we'll try to open it in Swift. Or if there's someplace else we need to open it at, you can let us know, and we'll do that. Or if all you can do is just share us your code, the actual just text, we can look at it to see if it has what it needs, but we won't be able to see if it's working, right? And that's where sharing us the code in the platform, we can then test it in an emulator, online emulators, which is why MIT App Inventor and Dunkable are good, is because we can pretend to be using an iPhone or an Android phone and see how your app works. And we'll be looking for certain key pieces of information within your code for scoring. Questions on that stuff? Thoughts?
Manny, I'll just add that, because of the fact that we're doing these things virtually, the pitch videos, the screenshots and whatever are even more important than they've ever been, because we won't be able to be there to see it in person.
Exactly, right? And you won't be able to explain things to us in the moment, right? If we have a question, we're not going to be able to ask you that question. So it's important that you put everything that's critical, right? And all of these things, in any project, in any paper you're doing for school, treat it as if the person you're going to be showing this to is clueless, right? Because if you're thinking about that, they have no idea what you're talking about. So you have to make sure that you explain everything, that anybody who watches it will be able to understand what you're doing, why you did it, and what it's going to look like and how it's going to work. If you can do that so that anybody that comes across your information can understand it, then you're going to do a good job, and it can be scored well, because you're basically anticipating questions, making sure that everything's clear to people. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate that. So your code, the things that we're going to be looking for in your code, right? There's, and I know a little bit about these. Other folks on the call could talk a little bit more about these if you have questions. But these are kind of the key pieces of the code. There's the API keys, which are application programming interface keys, right? So these are things that are used to get information from another website or database. A lot of times they're used in tracking and controlling how the interface is being used, right? So we're going to look for things that say API key or other kind of specific language that identifies things as an API key. So we'll be looking for those things in your code. We'll be looking for database usage, right? So we're going to be looking at things that have like ending in DB or says database, right? So there's going to be, again, kind of markers or signatures that you use the database in your code, right? And so that's going to be some place where your information is stored, is accessed by a phone. So examples are things like your contacts, stored messages, bookmarks in a web browser, right? Links, right? If your app is going to send people to other websites, you're probably going to have a database of those websites in your app, so that when people hit a button, your app will go to that link and then it'll open it up in the browser, right? So you'll have that database stored in your phone, or you might be accessing a publicly accessible database online, right? And we might be able to see that as well. We also want to see that you incorporated a phone function or sensor, right? So are you using what's available on the phone, right? Does your app use the camera? Does it use the speaker, the microphone, GPS? There's a lot of really cool sensors in the phones as well, right? You got accelerometers, pedometers, gyroscopes, magnets. I don't even know what some of these do really, right? I have an idea, but there's a lot of really cool stuff in your phone that you could use right? So you might be using the timer if you want people to breathe, right? You may have timeout sessions, like you've been on my app a long time. It's time to take a break from the app, right? I'm going to push you away for a few seconds. Who knows what you're going to do in your app, but you've got a lot of things within your phone that you could use to help accomplish those parts of the app that you want in there. And then the last piece, as far as the deliverables, is the engineering design notebook. And so we've incorporated this into all of our competitions, right? It's an important piece of documentation that engineers use. And I think, Trevor and Brad could probably talk to this a lot about this. It's basically, this is the proof that the work that you're saying you did is your work, right? And it's where you can take notes and document everything you've done, so that if you get to a point where you lose something or you make a mistake, you can go back to the earlier point in your notebook and start from there, right? Brad's got his notebook right there with him. So this helps you both protect your progress, right? So that if you get lost or something happens, you can go back and start fresh and use it. But also can help you, right? In the real world, it protects your intellectual property, right? So if you say this was my idea and someone says, no, it's my idea, you can say, I've got the proof. I've got date stamps and I got times and I've got all the reasons and the way that I came up with the information in this notebook. So what proof do you have that it's your idea? They don't have that proof, then you can prevent them from stealing your thoughts and your ideas. Excellent. And then for our high school folks, we also, and this is part of the Technovation also, they separate between middle school and high school, or they call it the junior and senior divisions, is the business plan, right? So this is that next step, right? You're more than just a coder and a designer. You're also a business person, right? You may want to make money and monetize your invention or your innovation. So you've got a 5-page maximum where you'll submit a PDF document that details the problem that's being addressed, right? What is the problem? What are the specifics? Who did you interview? What information did they give you? How did you progress your ideas? You're going to talk about the mission and vision of your app, right? What are you trying to accomplish? What is your overall like a mission, right? This is what we want to do. A vision is, this is what we hope the world is going to be after our app, comes into play, and how it's going to affect and change people's lives and make the world a better place, kind of thing. It doesn't have to be that spectacular, but that's kind of the general idea. Market research, right? So what's already out there that does something similar? How's your app better, more affordable, meet the needs better, right? What's the potential reach, right? Are you making this app for a group of 5 people? Or can this app be used by a much broader audience, making it therefore a much more marketable, a much more impactful, useful app? Financial projections, right? If you were starting a company, right, how much do you need to bring this app to market? How much money do you anticipate making off of it? Which doesn't necessarily have to be a lot, right? If you're doing this as a nonprofit and you're saying, really, we just want to make enough money off of this to continue expanding it and help people, that's great, right? That's valuable. Financial is not always about making money for a profit, right? It depends on what your mission and vision is, right? So those projections will tie into your mission and vision and your market research. And then what are your future plans? Because you may not get all the way through the app development in this project, but it might be something that you would consider doing beyond this or bringing back next year and reworking. So what would happen next after Mesa Day if you were going to continue? Or if someone else was going to say, I want to buy your idea and keep working on it, what would you suggest them doing as next steps of your project? Any questions on that piece or any other thoughts and feedback? These are my water breaks. All right, so some of the, now here's the even more boring stuff from the specs, the guidelines, right, submission. Right now, the deadline is April 7th. That is likely to change. What we're hearing from a lot of folks is they they're really going to need more time to work on these projects. So we're probably going to be pushing MESA Day back a little bit further, which means these deadlines will push back later into April. It might be closer to kind of late middle to end of April is when the deadlines will shift. So as those decisions get finalized, we will share that information with you all, because we want you to have as much time as possible to do these. I know a lot of people didn't get a chance to really start these projects until kind of late in the year, maybe even just this semester. So then we understand that, and we want to give you as much time as possible. But it'll probably be at least 2 weeks prior to MESA Day, so that we can collect the information, we can get that to our judges, and our judges can have the right amount of time to give it the proper consideration for scoring. And then we can make our announcements for the final placements at MESA Day. If we can't access, we will do our best to reach out to you if things can't be viewed by our judges to make those adjustments. But if we can't, just based because of time, we can't get a hold of you, or the judges aren't able to dedicate that time and come back to it, just know that those things may not be considered in your score, so it could negatively affect you. And we won't be accepting late materials, right? I know that's kind of harsh sometimes, but that happens at school, right? Sometimes your teachers are nice to you. Once you get into college, you'll find that teachers aren't always as nice. And once you get into a job, you will definitely realize that people are not as nice. So right now, where it's not going to cost you a grade, you might be disappointed, but it's not going to really hurt you overall. We're gonna stick to our late materials will not be accepted, because sometimes people learn the hard way. It just happens, right? So I would say make sure that your stuff is done early if you can, just in case for some reason your computer decides to do a critical update right when you're about to turn things in at the deadline, and now it's going to be late because you're plan to do it a couple hours before the deadline, just in case something crazy like that happens, and you need to reach out to another team member or your teacher to help you get things submitted. I've seen it happen. That's not uncommon. It's even happened at the national competition with MESA, where people unfortunately had their scores affected because they're like, well, I was traveling and I didn't realize I wasn't going to have internet access at the hotel, so I couldn't turn in my thing on time. We're sorry, the deadline was the deadline. Questions about that piece, the boring piece? And then our scoring criteria. These are things, right? The important things to know. I'll go over them kind of briefly, right? Where are you going to get your points, right? Ideation, pitch, what does that mean? We're going to look at that in the rubrics, right? The rubrics and the score sheets, like I always tell students, those are your cheat sheets, right? Use those as kind of your checklist of what you have to have in order to do well in the competition. So we'll go over these pieces in a minute. The final score will be determined by multiplying your score on all these pieces by your score on your notebook. So the notebook is actually really important, right? Because your final score will be based on as a percentage compared to your notebook score, right? It's a multiplier. So you could have perfect scores here, but if you gave us no notebook, we're going to multiply your awesome score by 0.1, and now your awesome score will be a not so awesome score. So you want to make sure you do a really good job on your notebook, because a really good notebook would make sure that you have the maximum amount of points. Okay. And these are some of the resources. There's more on our website, as I mentioned. And then we'll get into the rubrics, right? And again, these were really, taken from the Technovation Girls Challenge with their permission. So if you want to do well, look at the 5-point column here and aim for that, right? This is what you want to make sure you have. So in your pitch, in your design brief, in your business plan, you want to make sure that this information in the 5-point column is what people are coming away with when they read your stuff, right? So is there evidence of an important and meaningful problem? If you say, we built this app right? People are gonna be like, well, you didn't tell us what problem you're solving. You didn't show us research that you did, right? What community, I don't understand what community you're serving, right? And how that community connects to the problem and how that problem connects to your app. I'm gonna give you 1 point, right? But if you can show me that, right, the problem is very important, right? It has a huge impact on that community, on possibly the world. There's a strong personal connection to the problem, right? You have a deep understanding of the problem, and that's gone into your app, right? You've done your research, you've talked to people, you did surveys, had expert interviews, right? So if you're addressing people that help homeless, right? Are you talking to people that help homeless and got information from them, right? Do you have stats, to help you build the understanding of the problem? If you can give us evidence of these things, you will get 5 points, right? And we just go down the list.
Another way to say that is, it shouldn't be just an idea that you think is cool. It has to be vetted. It has to be checked with somebody in the community. And that's exactly what the judges are looking for. I mean, sometimes we hear students say, we're not sure how we're getting judged. Well, these are exactly the things that the judges are looking for.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you, Ben. So, and this is where you can ask your teacher, right? This is what we're going to submit. Then your teacher or other students, right? You can ask some of your classmates to say, hey, look at this stuff, and then use this rubric to assign me a score. If they're not giving you all 5s, then say, what do I need to change, right? What do I need to improve upon to make sure I get 5? So this is your checklist. You can go back and forth and make sure you're checking in with this, right? And again, this first part goes back to that human-centered part. Are you centering your project on the humans that will be served by it? Are you getting their feedback? Are you making sure that you're taking into consideration what they need to do well? Impact is very similar to that, right? What is the potential positive impact? Are you able to demonstrate that or explain that in the stuff you're submitting, right? This is what we anticipate the impact to be. How are we making people's lives better? How are we solving the problem? Is it a response to that research or testing? Again, are you getting that feedback? Do we know for sure that it's going to do what you say it's going to do based on research and testing? Is it innovative, right? So is it mostly new, right? Innovative doesn't mean it's brand spanking new. It could be making something better, right? This was a good idea. We made it better by doing this, right? So did you use the technology in an interesting way, right? We're not expecting like, we're making the next, iPhone kind of thing, but we want to see that, hey, it's definitely adding something. It's something new. It's interesting. It's changing things and making it better. So you don't know. Just know that we're not expecting like, excellent. Now Mesa's going to make a ton of money because we're going to hire these kids, and now we're just going to go off and rule the app store. That's not the kind of thing that we. The competitor analysis, right? So have you looked at the other apps that are out there doing similar things, right? How does your app compare to those, right? How did you change things? How did you improve upon or serve the population in a different way that app wasn't? Okay. And then we get into some of the technical stuff, right? Is it functioning the way you said it was going to function, right? You're like, if we're not sure that your app is working, we're going to give you a 1. So, it should be working. It should be clear that it's going to do what it's going to do, right? We understand this could be buggy. And remember, just because you score low in some of these things doesn't mean you're not going to do well in the competition. You might score low in, a couple of different categories, but do well overall in the competition because some of your other pieces were really strong. So don't be upset if you're not a 5 in everything, because more than likely the person that wins isn't going to be, right? Because none of these will probably be a finished product. So it's okay if you have some 1s. Just know that there's a reason why, and be ready to accept that, okay, this is where we're weak, right? And we'll work on it if we can, but we're going to focus on some of these other areas where we know we can really do well, right? So does it have full functionality? Is it developed beyond the login screen? Right? What's the user experience and design? So is it easy to navigate? Is it easy to use? Right? Is it well developed for the target audience? Right? If you're developing something for 3 to 5-year-olds, but you're using language and things in your app that are really only understood by people in high school or higher, then you didn't develop it for your target audience, right? So those kinds of things are important to remember. Did you go to 3 or more cycles of testing and refining? Not everybody's going to be able to get to that necessarily, but that's going to help you refine your app. Did you build it, test it, see what was wrong, figured it out, tested it again, see what else was wrong, right? So it's kind of doing all that that bug work, working out the bugs. I know we're getting close to being done here. Code complexity. So again, yeah, I can go all through all these. I don't know if that's helpful to everybody, but the idea is to use the rubrics as your kind of your cheat sheets, as your guide to how to do well and what to work on, right? If you're looking for 5s in the technical area, look at this column and let that guide your work, right? When you get to the pitch, right, what things do you want to make sure that you cover and that are clear in your pitch? You know, is it conveying that urgency of the problem? You know, is it a creative video? You know, as the judge, when I look at it, is it like, okay, I'm sitting through this video because I have to sit through this video and do a good job of scoring it, or is it like, man, I want to watch that video again. I really enjoyed watching that video. Thanks. You know, that was fun. You know, those kinds of things. Are they staying engaged or getting distracted while they're watching it? So just, you know, you use these rubrics for hit all those points. So if you're in middle school, these first 2 pages are going to be most important for you. Then if you're in high school, this 3rd page will really talk about that business plan, right? So what are we looking for in the business plan, right? This doesn't say this specifically as far as what should be included in the business plan, but all of these areas should be clear in your plan, right? So there's the marketing plan, the financial sustainability, how strong is it overall, future goals, what's my impression, okay? And then the last page of the rubrics is the design notebook, right? So really this is your checklist of all the things you should have included in your notebook, because that's what judges are going to look for. They're going to go to your notebook, they're going to kind of, you know, look through it. They may not have the time to read in detail everything, but they're going to be looking for these things, right? Do I see where in the notebook they've described an objective? Yeah, cool, check. Right? Do I see where they have an area that says, I know I will be successful when I do these things, and it's a check mark? They're like, cool, they have that. They talk about what's going to limit their ability to be successful, or what they have to be aware of when they're doing the design. It's check, check. And if you got all of those check marks, they're going to give you a 3, right? And they'll probably go quickly through that. So you want to make sure that those are easy to see. They're clearly labeled, right? They might be, if you're using a digital notebook, you might have sections that has all of these pieces, right? So you don't want it to kind of just be a bunch of words just kind of go on and they have to try to figure out where everything is. These kind of gives you an idea, right? Have something labeled in bold, a different color underlined that says objective, success criteria, constraints, because that's going to make it really easy for the judge to go in there and say, do they got it? Do I see that it's actually decent work? Check, check, check. You know, they can quickly check off if you have things organized and laid out well. It also helps you go back and refer to your own notes as well.
It helps the judges if you actually use these terms, because we'll be looking for them. If you don't say test and you say first attempt or something like that, it's harder for us to understand that that was a test. We might not give you credit for it if we can't tell.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. So this is going to be your, right? You're going to have your explore section of your notebook, and you're going to have these pieces, right? And these may be 3 sections under explore. Then you're going to have your design section, right? You're going to have a materials section in design, and you're going to have a data from previous trials, right? Like the sketches, right? And you can say sketch 1, photo 1, right? Prototype 1, right? First ideas, or this was one team member's idea, second team member's idea, third team member's idea, and then off of those 3 ideas, we came up with this initial prototype, right? So using labels. So again, the person who's reading this is clueless about your project. So you want to be able to lead them through your process in your notebook. And then when you do your test, right? Test 1, what did your test do? What were the results of your test? What was the data? And then what were your conclusions from that data that led you to make design choice changes or different decisions for your app? And then, you know, if you have that table of contents, like these are the easy points, right? Does it have your name and your school name and your team members' names, right? Those are the easy points right there.
And we have seen other projects submitted where they just forget to put their name on it and they don't get those points. So it's like the easiest ones you can get.
Right, exactly. And then after the competition, I'm like, all right, I got a notebook that says this. Does anybody want to claim it? Because I don't know who it belongs to, right? At least with the virtual ones, you're only giving us a copy, so you still have it. But we have a lot of lost notebooks in my office.
Well, the other problem is we might not know which school you are and we might not give you your points.
True, exactly. All right, so that was kind of the overview. I think we used most of our time. Any questions or final thoughts that people might have? All right. So that'll conclude this session. Of course, you can always ask us after the fact. I'll stop my share. Send us questions or ask MESA staff to come in or request for some of our volunteers to come in. We can reach out to our industry folks and say, hey, you know, here's some people that are looking for some feedback on their project or some thoughts. And we will do that. Thank you, Brad and Trevor. Appreciate you being here. Always great to have other folks who can share practical experiences and relate it to what they've done either in college or in the professional ranks. But if there are no more questions, I'm going to head out of this room. I see Bill's here. That's my cue. I'm always running late and get ready for my next room. All right. See you later.